Dead Island 2. It was popping off for a while before it released. The decade-old game is finally coming out. You either had high hopes for it, or you were thinking it was gonna be another Duke Nukem Forever situation. Me personally, I wasn't excited for it one bit. Not even with the very first announcement back in 2014. Even when I heard the news and leaks about it being in production again, like 2 years ago, it did nothing for me. And let me tell you, I was a huge fan of the first game. I remember begging my mom to buy it for me. I was like 9 or 10, so I feel like you can imagine what my mom thought when I showed her the game I wanted. Obviously she was concerned, but my parents weren't ever strict like that. So I remember being in elementary, and when my mom picked me up, she handed me the game in school, and I remember running home to play it. And as far as I'm aware, I'm no serial killer, Discord mod, or furry yet. So I think I turned out just fine. Weirdly enough, I never really had nightmares about it, even though one of my most vivid memories about it is being drenched in cold sweat as I ran through the sewer parts of the game. I was so scared of that part, and for the longest time I wasn't even able to get past the beach area of the game because I just didn't really care about what the game wanted me to do. I was just doing my own thing. So I was stuck in the first area of the game for a long time. And I didn't even know you could play with randoms. Until one day, after like years of playing, someone joined my lobby. I was so confused. I put myself through all the fear for nothing. I played that game religiously. It was basically my childhood game, and that's a sentence no kid should say about the Dead Island game. I played Dying Light many times too, even recently. I really like that game too, but I could honestly tell you more stories and stuff about Dead Island than I ever could of Dying Light. Even if Dying Light is the most recent game, I actually haven't visited Dead Island in over like 6 to 7 years, and I still have a lot more to say about it. My point is, even with all the nostalgia, all the good times, and me thinking Dead Island was a really good game, it's not, by the way. It's actually kinda the opposite. I've still felt like Dead Island 2 wasn't something I really needed or care about. I mean, when it was announced, I was like, oh okay, cool. And when it was announced that it was cancelled or whatever, I was like, oh okay, cool. So I'm bringing this up to say that I had no expectations for this game. I wasn't hype, but I wasn't necessarily thinking it would be a bad game. So when I tell you that this game is actually just the most mid game ever and takes so many steps back, I'm being completely honest. So yeah, let's talk about the game now. Honestly, I don't even know where to start, but I do know where not to. The story. I have no idea what happens here because it was so goddamn boring. Which brings me to one of my biggest complaints. You spend like 80% of the game inside apartments or houses. I'm not even kidding. Every time I think about any interaction with the characters or just levels or whatever, it's always inside a apartment or house. Imagine how boring your game has to be for me to remember more than half of the game being inside apartment buildings. I know this sounds like a weird complaint, but imagine playing, I don't know, Fallout, and all you remember about that game is spending your time in a garage or something. Like bro, this is Fallout, there is a whole ass wasteland out there. Same with Dead Island, there is a whole ass island. Well, not anymore, this is LA. You have a whole ass hood out there. Again, it's a weird complaint that you don't usually think about, and that's how you know the problem is present. When you actually realize that it's a thing most games do so good, you don't even realize it could be a problem. For example, you might have not noticed this, but in Dying Light, some of the cutscenes or story progression dialogues took place on a rooftop. It deliberately asks you to go on a specific point so you can enter this kind of cinematic. Obviously, it's because you are doing a secret meeting of sorts, so you need a lonely area. But it also makes it so you always have the whole world to look at. Makes you want to explore it as soon as the cutscene ends. And once it's over, you're literally already on the map, ready to go. Again, you don't realize how effective this is at making you actually feel like the world is a place you can explore freely. And it makes for interesting cinematics. Cause think about it, there's really nothing stopping this game from just making you go inside a safe house and into a weird room or closet on it and having the talk in there, all boring and shit and gay. Hey, what are you doing in that corner? They could have just done that, but it'd be boring. I mean shit, look at the first few hours of the game. You go to house to speak to Emma, you go to this other house now to find someone, you look for clues in the house, You find the address for another house to go to. You now have to defend the house. Now you gotta go inside the house to talk to people. Now you gotta go to this other house to talk to this girl. Now you go fuck. House. It's just so damn boring. And at first I was kind of fine with it because I felt like, oh, it's just the beginning of the game. You know, they're trying to keep everything low key, or like just having small set pieces, so when you get the big set pieces it actually blows your mind. But no, it's just like 80% of the game is just this. Let's talk about LA, by the way. I feel like LA is an overrated idea for this game, at least. Just how many places does LA have that can be interesting to fight zombies in? Actually, you know what? Probably many. But this game only has like 2 standouts. Santa Monica and this Hollywood area. And that's it. The rest of the game is literally going through neighborhoods, houses, and buildings. Like, they tried to play it off by adding more tiny sections that makes you think that there is more to the map, and LA wasn't a bad idea at all. Like, oh, you were just inside a house and now you're in a sewer. Mind blown. I know it sounds hypocritical of me to say it because Dead Island 1 did the same, but Dead Island 1 is a 2012 game, and not only that, this gets me to my next topic. Dead Island 1 was actually open world. So at least in that game, it actually felt like the sewer was more of a dungeon of sorts. Dead Island 2 is an open world. It does like a Borderlands thing where it has a big map but it's separated between loading screens, except in this case the areas are much smaller, to the point where each area is basically a corridor. So you have super tiny areas that are a bunch of houses and apartments and are basically corridors for level design, and it's just boring bland apartments. So if you do any sort of exploring, it basically means you'll just be spending your time in apartments, which, by the way, it just blows my mind how boring the apartments are in general. Yeah, they are literally bland. I mean even the characters are bland. Look at Emma, this character. Wow, it's that short hair lady with the white shirt. Such an iconic character design. White shirt lady inside a white wall apartment. Yeah, this is just the most interesting cinematic I've ever laid my eyes on. So yeah, it's shitty. Even when the level design shines, like in Santa Monica, there are no zombies in this game. It's super empty, so it makes it boring. So yeah, a huge step back in just the level design and I guess environment departments too from the first game. Remember the skill trees from Dead Island and Dying Light? Well, here we have this stupid card system. It's boring. I mean, I know skill trees are overdone nowadays, but at least they give you some sort of progression. You actually know what you're getting and you can plan ahead of time what you're aiming for. Here you get a card and it's random, or at least it feels like it is. And it's just dumb bonuses and shit. And I get what they were trying to do here. Other games have done similar systems like these. Well, not really, but it gives it a rogue-like kind of feel, I guess. I don't know how to feel about these damn cards, to be honest, because at first I was open to the idea of it. I can tell you right now, I was not a fan of it when I first saw them in game, but I was like, okay, maybe they're trying something new, I'll see. And I just never liked it. You know, I just realized it was kind of stupid and I just started equipping whatever, and it worked. You don't really need to focus on whatever these cards do. They each do their own kind of thing in their own like section. So this leveling up system is just another step back from the Dead Island and Dying Light system. And I know I didn't spend as much time on this topic as I did in the other one, but you'll see at the end why I mentioned this. Okay, so now I'm just gonna tell you what the balancing of the game was like for my first playthrough, at least, because the balancing for this game is all over the place. At first everything was fine, it was a bit hard for sure, but you had to use your environment to your advantage, so that was pretty cool. Mid-game enemies were kinda spongy, but you could still kill them and all. It was still enjoyable, but then late game shows up and it's just unbearable. Enemies get really spongy. I relied too much on my guns to get me through, which, by the way, they also really suck. And I gotta be honest, you get guns literally like 2 hours into the game. Sam B gives them to you. Get it? Sam B, like zombie. I didn't realize that's why his name is that, by the way. I felt so smart finding that out, but then I felt stupid because y'all probably already knew this. But like, who do bitch? Which to me was already a huge red flag that you get guns so early in the game. The whole time I was thinking the game has potential, but then I got to the guns and I just knew something was wrong. You don't usually get guns this fast in Dead Island or Dying Light games, cause they make the game kinda easy. You usually get them mid to late game, and even then they have downsides. So it was strange to get them so soon. And yeah, that's because the game is short, and it also sucks. This game actually managed to make a shotgun in a zombie game feel weak. That's a sin. But yeah, the last few missions I just ran through the zombies. I just wanted this game to end, to be honest. So I'm bringing this up because this one feature kinda proves to me that the developers didn't really test out or care about the balancing of the game. This game has a classic colored loot system, so white is basic and green is better and blue is even better and so on. Well, this game has a button in your menu that literally scales up your weapon to your level. Now, when I first saw this button, I was so confused by it because I couldn't believe what I was reading. I was like, there is no way this button actually does what I think it does. That is so stupid, I don't believe it. And I never used it because it said something about messing with my weapon, and I really didn't even bother to read the rest because I was just kind of like, I just want to beat this already. What it does, it literally brings any weapon you have to your current level. So if you take a weapon from level 1 and you're like level 30, you can literally just scale it up to level 30. I'm sure you understand how this breaks the loot system. Like, why even bother looking for better weapons when you can just find one good one and bring it up to your level at the end of the game? Imagine this system in any other RPG game. It makes the RPG aspect kinda redundant. And I know this game is not a heavy RPG game, it couldn't be even if it tried. But it's still such a stupid feature. Apparently it's because, oh, that way when players find a weapon they like, they can take it up to them and they don't have to drop it and find something else to use. Like, I get it, it sounds like a nice idea in your mind, but in practice it's really stupid. That's like giving, it's just such a stupid feature. It shows the lack of confidence they had with the balancing of this game. Oh, we don't actually know if the game is well balanced, let's just add this feature and call it a day in case it's not. It's like adding a insta-kill every enemy button in the Fallout Pip-Boy, just in case any area is a bit too hard. Also, the crafting and mods in this game sucks. I don't know what's wrong with it, to be honest. I just know it feels less engaging. So yeah, step backs all the way. Do I even have to say it? The game is rushed. My question is, how do you make a game that is a decade late be rushed? Like, bro, the game is already about 10 years too late. At this point, just take your damn time. You know what's crazy? Dead Island came out in 2012 and Dying Light came out in 2015. They are only 3 years apart, yet they feel like they were a decade apart. I mean, I know it's cause Dying Light came out in the PS4 and Xbone, but still, the innovation of parkour is so massive that it feels like it's just impossible to go back to no parkour. And I'm gonna say it, people seem to think that we can't critique Dead Island 2 for not having parkour because it's not a Dying Light game. Well, you know what? I think that's complete goober shit. It's just one of those rare cases of innovation that is just such an upgrade that there is no going back. Very few times this has happened, but this is one of those times. If you remove parkour from Dying Light, you have Dead Island. If you remove the combat from Dead Island, you have no game. If you remove the combat from Dying Light, you have a parkour game. One can live without the other, but Dead Island only relies on the combat, which is really outdated. To me, Dead Island has the edge over Dying Light only in atmosphere and tone. I was never a fan of the Dying Light setting, just not my cup of tea. But in no way does the mildly improved combat make up for the lack of a parkour system. Dead Island 2 was stuck in a weird position where they have an awkward line to cross. Yeah, we know we would be copying Dying Light if we added parkour, but let's be real here, it literally would just be a Dying Light game if we added parkour. But they decided not to step over it. Dying Light 1 copied Dead Island for sure, but it heavily improved on it, and it gave it its own identity. Dead Island 2 is still Dead Island 1, and it mildly improved on it. It's like that one guy who peaked in high school and just keeps mentioning high school whenever he can. But let's be real, Even with parkour, the game would still suck. Dead Island 2 is just in a weird spot. It fits between Dead Island 1 and Dying Light, but it just doesn't fit in the way it came out. We don't have time to add a good leveling up system, just add some cards and call it a day. We don't have time to make an open world game, just make a few maps and call it a day. We don't have time to balance the game, just add a scale button and call it a day. We don't have time to make a full story, let's just finish it on DLC. Notice a pattern? A lot of decisions and changes in the game are just that, changes, not improvements. Changes made in order to save time, the quickest and easiest ways they could have done things. Sure, we could have added a good level up system, but that takes time and effort. Let's just add this card system because it's easier and it works just fine. And sure, it works, but that's all it does, it just works, it's not fun. The game suffers from this all over, and I'm sure I missed a few stuff, and I skipped some stuff too, like how the throwables in this game are infinite. You don't have to craft them anymore, they just have a cooldown now. Another decision made that just makes the game less engaging. This game was $60 by the way. The fact that they asked this much for this game makes it so any critique against it is valid. It is most definitely not worth that. It can fool you to think that it does because of the gore and the graphics, but it's honestly a solid $20 game. This game is late, but not only that, it's literally late. Thanks for watching.